I was raised in a religious family in the suburbs of Chicago. My father was an evangelical minister, a circuit riding preacher in his early ministry. Before the Depression, I wanted to be a missionary or a missionary doctor. In college, I was exposed to what was called, quote, higher criticism, which questioned the authority of the Bible. This caused me to do a lot of thinking about religion. Later, I found a book by a German professor that was quite profound. I asked my doctor, William Sadler, on Diversey Parkway in Chicago, if he had read this book, because I just felt he knew something. He said he had read the book, then added, "I've got something I think you'd be interested in." He told me about the Urantia papers, and when I showed interest, he said, "What are you doing on Sunday? Could you possibly come to the forum next Sunday afternoon?" Explaining that it would take too long to describe the purpose of the forum in his office, the doctor invited me to come early. Upon joining the forum, I signed, at the doctor's request, a pledge of secrecy concerning the Urantia papers. I began reading the papers in 1945. I worked in downtown Chicago, and after work on Friday nights, I would take the bus to 533 Diversey. Afterwards, I'd take a late train and wouldn't get home until midnight. Reading one paper at a time, I started with the Jesus papers, then began reading from the first part of the book. I was convinced that what I read was true, because the story of Jesus' life as father to his brothers and sisters touched on so many of the same problems I had had in my life. One time, when I first began to read, I approached Mrs. Kellogg, who was the proctor at the desk, and asked, "Do you really believe all of this?" "I certainly do," she replied. The Sunday afternoon group, which had started as a discussion group, was called the Forum. At the time I began attending it, it had become an open house time for readers. I also belonged to a group called the 70. There were just 70 people in this group originally, made up of those who had read the papers in their entirety. Within this group was a school formed to train teachers, which held evening classes at 533. The problem was that there were teachers, but no persons to teach at this time. Teachers far outnumbered new readers. In the 70 group, each person had to write a paper on the Urantia topic. These were passed by the doctor and read on Sundays. My parents, who were by then in their 70s, lived next door to me, and they were curious about where I was going on Friday nights and Sunday afternoons. I finally had to tell them a little bit about the papers. My dad was skeptical, but my mother was quite open-minded. They both actually held some of the same ideas as the book already. Living so far away, I wasn't able to keep up with the meetings. I was divorced and had much responsibility. These papers helped me raise my children. I also learned that with disappointment, we have another chance. The Urantia teachings literally changed my life.